Hello, Algebra 2. We're going to be working with lesson 2.7 today. We're going to be solving quadratic inequalities. You guys know what an inequality is. I know you do. So, a quadratic inequality in two variables can be written these following ways as long as a doesn't equal 0 and a, b, and c are real numbers, a, b, and c. And we're going to be talking about quadratic inequalities in two variables, and we're going to be talking about quadratic inequalities in one variable today. And all that means is we have this one's in two variables. We have two variables being y and the other one being x. So when we get into one with one variable, there will be a number here for y, so then x will be our single variable. Okay, so if we've written these following ways, and they're all the same, I mean not the same, but y is less than ax squared plus bx plus c, and y is greater than, and y is less than or equal to, and y is greater than or equal to. So those are the ways they can be written. It's just your four inequality symbols. And I want you guys to be fluent in stating, you know, when you see this, I want you guys to be fluent in saying, oh, that is a less than sign. You know, I don't want any, it opens to the right, or, you know, an alligator or whatever, none of that. I want you guys to know what these symbols say. All right. So we're going to write down our steps to solving our quadratic inequalities, and then we're going to go through and we'll go ahead and work through some so you know what the heck I'm talking about. All right. So you can write down these following steps. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to graph our parabola, and that defines the boundaries. So they give us a parabola, we want to graph it. Simple. Step 2 and 3 are where things you really got to pay attention to detail. So for step 2, when we're graphing that parabola and we're drawing the parabola, actually, we're going to use a solid line when we're talking about less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. And then we're going to use a dashed line when our inequality shows a less than sign or a greater than sign. Okay, and then the last part is where the inequality part comes in, because we're going to have to shade in part of our graph depending on whether they're talking about y is greater than this parabola or y is less than this parabola. So it's saying that y is greater than this parabola. We're going to shade above this parabola for y is greater than and y is greater than or equal to. And we're going to shade below our parabola if we're talking about y being less than our quadratic, or y being less than or equal to our quadratic. All right, make sure that you have all of those written down in the steps part of your notes. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to graph one of these so I can show you what the heck these mean. Sounds good? Okay, so we have the inequality y is greater than or equal to x squared minus 7x plus 10. So as we said before, step 1 is going to be to graph. And how do we know what to graph? We need to look at our properties of quadratic equations in standard form, because this is in standard form. And so if we go back to like lesson number 2, I think it was, we know that we need to find our vertex, we need to find our y-intercept and our x-intercept and everything else. So how do I find my vertex? Negative b over 2a. So I'm going to find my vertex first. Negative b over 2a. Negative b would be a negative 7, so we're going to positive 7, over 2 times a, so over 2. And then I'm going to put that in a decimal form, which that is equal to 3.5. And I know that that is the x value of my vertex. And then I'm going to find my y coordinate of my vertex by plugging x into this equation. So I am going to have 3.5 squared minus 7 times 3.5 plus 10. And so I'm going to square my 3.5 minus that plus that, and I'm going to end up with, or should end up with, negative 2.25. So then I know that my vertex is 3.5 and negative 2.25. Okay? And the next thing I want to do is, what is my y-intercept? And our y-intercept is equal to our c, so my y-intercept is 10. And I can find, how do I find my x-intercept? I can find the roots of my equation, I can find the zeros of my equation, you know, same thing. So I'm going to factor this. And when I do that, I'm going to write my two sets of parentheses. And I know I'm going to have an x to start both of them. And then what two things multiply to get 10 and then add up to get 7, or negative 7? Negative 5 and negative 2. So then my x-intercept, if I solve both these for 0, my x-intercepts is 2 and 5. Okay, that should be enough information to graph this thing. So let's do that. And don't mind my wonderful looking graph over here. That's my marker. So I'm going to graph my vertex first. 3.5 and negative 2.25. So 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay, so there's my vertex. And then I'm going to put in my y-intercept, my y-axis, and my y-intercept is all the way at 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. I'm going to graph that point, or plot that point. And my x-intercept is going to cross the x-axis at 2 and 5. So my x-axis is going to cross at 2, and it's going to cross at 5. And I could use my axis of symmetry to plot this point over here, but I have enough information to graph this the way it is. And now before I draw this in, you need to look at step number 2, which is going to be, are we going to use a solid line or are we going to use a dashed line? Because we're going to use a solid line since it says greater than or equal to. And now we would draw this in with a dashed line if it was just greater than. So I can draw it in with a solid line. And I asked you guys, I didn't do it here, it's a bad example, obviously. You should draw in your points. You should state that this is 3.5, negative 2.25. I would really appreciate that on your graphs or have this information right beside it, one of the two. Okay, so I drew in my graph. That was for step 2. Now I need a shade because it's an inequality. So this is stating that y is greater than x squared minus 7x plus 10. And I told you guys that I was going to shade above the parabola for y is greater than or greater than or equal to, and I was going to shade below the parabola for y is less than or equal to. And it's greater than. So what I mean by that the inequality that we're solving for is going to be greater than this parabola, and shading above the parabola, I'm going to shade like everything inside of here because that's above where it's coming up at. So all of this is going to get shaded. As you can see, that's above the parabola. If I said shade below then, so if this was a less than, let's pretend for a second that this said less than. If that was the case, when I say shade below the parabola, we would be shading all of this out here. And all this down here. But it's greater than, so the first way I have it in here is what we need to shade.